Van Augur is hard carrying the Blackbeard pirates. This guy is everywhere, and he just went nuts in the latest One Piece episode. Chapter 1107 has officially dropped, and it was phenomenal from top to bottom. So many crazy things happening, the Blackbeard pirates finally showing their face, but also leaving, and also, I got what I finally wanted. Sanji, Kizaru, clash. Thank the Lord! He heard my prayers. So let's get right into the chapter, but this time we're gonna start from the very end because I believe that's the most important part. So Catarina is tagged alongside Van Augur instead of Laffy like a lot of us thought, but it still makes sense due to his powers being so useful, and they have an audience with Saturn, where Catarina then touches his leg, and this is major. Because of her power being the nine-tailed fox devil fruit, she's able to mimic the appearances of anyone she touches, it appears, but possibly also copy their powers as well. But what makes this really crazy is the Blackbeard pirates now have the opportunity to infiltrate Mary Joie, with Catarina posing as Saturn. Even if they don't plan on doing that, she could transform into Saturn and thus take control of the Pacifista and the Seraphim as long as Bonnie's not around. They then proceed to have a very interesting conversation where Saturn questions why Catarina is even following Blackbeard, where she responds, it's because he's special, where Saturn then replies, as well as his lineage, not his race, but his lineage. This is very important because this could even hint further on the theory that Blackbeard could indeed have the blood or be related to Roxy Zebek, who also wanted to rule the world, which we find out is Blackbeard's entire goal. And because they're putting emphasis on Blackbeard's lineage, I believe that is the reason why he's not able to sleep at night, but also able to eat 2 devil fruits, as Marco stated in Marineford. Peach's body is a bit unusual compared to others. He then proceeds to attack them, but they dip due to Van Augur's abilities, who is a goat by the way. But before they leave the island, they're then confronted by Caribou, and thus a theory of ours that we've been saying for a few years now finally comes full circle, as Caribou always wanted to join the Blackbeard pirates and wants an audience with him. Why is this important? Well, that's because, if you remember, he has the location, or knows the location, of 2 ancient weapons, Pluton in Wano and Poseidon in Fishman Island. So not only does he have a member that could transform into one of the Gorosei now, he also will have the location of 2 ancient weapons. His pirate career started on a raft made of logs, and for him to then eventually get the strongest battleship in the world is pretty crazy. But once he learns the locations of the ancient weapons, he's most likely gonna raid both Fishman Island and Wano, and this is how Momonosuke and Yamato could come back into the story, because he's most likely gonna break the walls down himself with the earthquake powers. And then there's the prophecy with Madame Shirley saying she had a vision that Luffy would destroy Fishman Island. This could be because of the battle between him and Blackbeard, and maybe the government could get involved, as it could be a giant war to claim Poseidon. However, what if Catarina was able to touch Luffy, copying his appearance for later down the line? So instead of Luffy destroying Fishman Island and freeing the fishmen, it was the Blackbeard pirates the entire time. Now, was the plan always for Catarina to copy Saturn? I'm not entirely sure. I personally think they saw an opportunity and they took it, and thus they skipped a step, and they were going to do this later down the line. Possibly Blackbeard heard that one of the Gorosei was heading to Egghead, and thus he sent his people, but as far as I know, his people were already on the island before the Gorosei got there. And not only do I believe the certain pirate Shanks was talking about with the Gorosei was indeed Blackbeard, but now, after this stunt, I fully believe that Blackbeard will be the final villain of One Piece rather than Emu. And Blackbeard could even be the one to defeat Emu rather than Luffy and usurp him on the throne, and thus making him king and having full control of not only the pirate world, but also the world government and the Marines. We then get to the highlight of the chapter, Saturn and Kizaru versus Sanji and Luffy. Luffy is in Gear 5 laughing at Bonnie for crying and the way she tried to punch Saturn earlier, which is pretty crazy, but she was trying to imitate Nika. And Luffy, this is the first time Luffy even hears the name Nika, so we're getting slow steps into him learning the true power and nature of his devil fruit, and then he proceeds to teach her how to really punch. He then beats the ever-loving shit out of Saturn and sends him flying, and without missing a beat, Kizaru then tries to kill Bonnie until Sanji saves the day and not just blocks the laser beam, but he kicks it out of the way. I have never in the entirety of this series seen Kizaru make this face. He was completely shocked and bewildered. Sanji's eyebrow has shifted, so he's now in his awakened Germa state. Sanji then explains how he's able to do this by saying light doesn't hold a candle to love. This is actually an underlying theme within the arc, where concepts such as desire, love, and will are able to defy reality and logic. Vegapunk says as such a few chapters ago, trying to explain why Kuma is able to act on his own, and he says you can chalk it up to love. As Kizaru laments that he's gonna have to bring their heads back after all this, Sanji then responds, "You'd better start drafting an apology letter for them then." When it comes to one-liners, Sanji's one of the coldest to ever do it. But as of right now, it does look like we'll be getting Sanji and Luffy versus Saturn and Kizaru. I'm very excited. Personally, I don't think Sanji's ready to defeat an admiral. However, I do think he is strong enough to hold one off. Possibly until Luffy defeats Saturn, and then maybe Kizaru will back off because now he doesn't have any authority telling him what to do and he can save face. Maybe. It's possible that Sanji could be the one to defeat Saturn. We know that Saturn doesn't understand the concept of love, and love is the entire character of Sanji, so that could be a thing going on there, although I do think it'd be weird for anyone but Luffy to defeat Saturn. Also, he was able to pin down Sanji where he couldn't even move. Unless Sanji learned how to get out of that or how it works, I doubt Sanji will be the one to defeat Saturn, but he might lay in some blows. Although Sanji's comment back in Thriller Bark saying that he's the straw that's going to cause the Marines the most trouble could come to fruition here if he defeated one of the Elder Stars. That would be fantastic. However, I highly doubt that'll happen. It'll be Luffy defeating Kizaru and Saturn with the assistance of Sanji, and we'll see just how strong Sanji is, as well as Zoro in a sense, compared to the admirals. Because if Sanji performs well against Kizaru, then you know Zoro would be on demon time if he was here. Either way, I'm super excited to see how this all plays out. I've waited years for Sanji versus Kizaru. They're both very fast. Sanji was able to deflect the laser beam when Kizaru was just feet away from Bonnie, and they both said the same thing: speed equals weight. Even if Sanji gets clapped, I do think this will set up a fight between the two later down the line. Once the Straw Hats finally go against the world government and the Marines, I believe Sanji will be fighting an admiral, and it most likely will be Kizaru. And this is a really cool moment because it goes back to Shibodi, where Sanji wasn't fast enough to save his friends getting annihilated, but now he is, and he's able to pay back what happened to him and his crew 2 years ago. Of course, other things happened in the chapter as well. We got a straight continuation of where we left off last chapter, with the Giants raiding Egghead to save the Straw Hats. And sometimes I forget just how strong the Giants are, because usually we see them, they're kind of scrubby. By themselves, they're not really all that, but as a group, they're absolutely devastating, as one of them was able to destroy a battleship in just one swing. That's actually pretty crazy, and now we're getting a sense as why Big Mom wanted the giant army and believed she would become Pirate King if she had their power. So clearly, they're very, very strong as a unit, especially because every giant in the Marines are automatically a Vice Admiral. That's really good. And I think Elbap's going to show why the Giants are so feared. But also, Zoro is still fighting Lucci. I know the jokes. He's fighting the Putty Cat while Sanji and everyone else is doing crazy stuff. Obviously, I think that fight's about to wrap up very shortly. I do think Zoro could beat Lucci. I think it's more Zoro and the fans were underestimating just how strong Lucci is. I've been saying for a long time, Lucci is a lot stronger than people give him credit for. Just because he got washed by Luffy doesn't mean he's weak. It's just that Luffy is on an entirely different level. It's like when Kaido one-shotted Luffy at the beginning of Wano. Was Luffy weak? No, he was still able to defeat or fight Katakuri for 11 hours. So like, let's not do all that now. But once again, I believe Blackbeard will be the final villain of the series, because at the end of the day, the story is about pirates. It's the pirates that rule the new world, not the government. Yes, the government is the reason the world is so corrupt, but when you look at this chapter as well as Marineford, where it was the pirates versus the Marines and the world government, it was Blackbeard as a third party in the background scheming, who comes in and disrupts everything and ends up becoming the big bad that everyone should be worried about. I do think these two arcs are foreshadowing to how the final war will play out. But otherwise, that's the video. We got yet again another fantastic chapter of One Piece. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and click the bell icon to stay notified if you got this far. I would like to reach 5k subs by the end of the year, maybe even 10k if we're lucky. I would appreciate you guys' effort. Otherwise, hope you guys have a good day and a good night. Catch you guys in the next one. Peace.